Vegas, stage 2 in Las Vegas.
That's right. And Richard even entered, right?
Yes, I did.
Which was pretty cool. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I got to watch you and your boys on TV. And he's at Moorestown, and I'll let you take it away, Rich.
Okay. Well, hello. My name is Rich Wilczewski. I teach chemistry at Moorestown High School. I've been teaching since 1978. And this is my presentation of what we're doing in the Moorestown District with the ICED program. It all started in 2013 when I got an invitation to Dr. Charles Camarda's Innovation Boot Camp. I spent a week with this guy and 20 other teachers, and he immersed us in the ICE program and showed us how to work it in the classroom. Well, when the week that I spent there, I totally drank the Kool-Aid. I came home and I was ready to get started. I went right to my supervisor and says, "We got to do this here." All right? And he said, "Maybe someday, not now." So I felt like I failed. Well, then I went to my principal and said, "We got to do this. It's great." He said, "Great idea. We'll see." I failed again. Then I went to the guidance department, figured, they're the ones that make all the courses happen. And they said, "That's impossible. You can't just start a new course." No.
So you're getting close. You're getting close. Right?
Then I went to the superintendent's office, and, well, we didn't have one at that time, so I got the same answer. And so I knew I was on the right track, because I was failing smart, fast, small, cheap, early, and often. Right? Now, I realized that this is not a course change that I was trying to do. It's a change in culture.
That's right.
It's really a change in a transformation in the way we educate. So from my perspective, because I've taught in a number of different places, I was in the right school district. Moorestown is definitely the right place. Just wasn't quite yet the right time. But I decided I was going to infuse this idea everywhere I could, with or without special permission, as long I intended to stay within the rules most of the time. Well, I was teaching summer school that year, a couple weeks after I met with Charlie, and so these are my summer school students. I had given them an assignment inside the context of the chemistry course of how they would capture an asteroid. And one girl, Nia, she came back with this idea. She said it would be a giant bird that would open, the belly would open up, and a net would come out. Now, I didn't laugh when she gave me this assignment out loud. I didn't let her know what I was thinking. And I'm thinking, maybe I did a bad job of explaining this assignment. And on the way home, and I'm thinking, you know what? She just described a space shuttle. Looks like a bird, belly opens up. Hey, this is one of those ideas that sounds stupid at first. And Charlie told me one thing: never reject an idea because it sounds stupid. All right, take a good look at it. Some of those stupid ideas mature into really good ideas. All right. Well, I also, in the fall, I got a job teaching in the same district as the after-school program. And I could design any course I want, so I designed 2 courses. The first course was a rocket video for elementary school students, like 2nd graders. And the video that I can't show you now, but I'll show at the end. In that course, at that time, I didn't think I could put the students on an asteroid challenge. Now I think different after I've been doing this a couple of years. So next time I teach this course, I'm going to give them the asteroid assignment. This was more an effectual, get them interested in space. We launch rockets, and we talk about NASA. We meet twice a week for 6 weeks, and it takes us that long for 2nd graders to build the rockets, and then we launch them at the end. So I'll show that video at the end. Then the other after-school program I taught was for 6th graders, and I put them on the asteroid project, and to be honest with you, I didn't think they were going to do a great job. They totally astonished me. They did a really good job, and we were fortunate enough to do a video conference with Dr. Camarda. And I have a small clip of this video conference. This student here, his name is Naveen. He has an incredible outlook. He'll do a much better job than I ever could in giving you the student perspective on this project.
He actually was the best spokesman for the program. This kid, this little short clip that he did was unbelievable spokesman for why this works. This kid was precious. He was really cool.
He's moving up gradually to the high school. I'll see him in high school soon. For the
we'll have to show that video. I was blown away.
All right. Now, that same fall, I was invited to a Board of Education meeting because I'm an advisor of the Environmental Club, and they did something really cool. They were getting an award. After the award, one of the board members came up to me and started talking. I used this opportunity to pitch the NASA ICE program, and I got her attention. So I knew we were moving slowly, but in the right direction. Now, in my chemistry class that year, I was able to infuse another group of assignments into the lessons and directly tie them. That's the challenge. Is you've got these things that the students really want to do, and now can you match it with your curriculum? So you've got to be very creative to be able to do both of them. It can be done.
And you want to know something? This is where, Tracy, we had another teacher at Bergen Academy, and I know the guys from Bergen Academy are on the line. Oh, geez, I just forgot her name. Oh, that's terrible. But she was a chemistry teacher, and so when we talk about sustaining humans on Mars, it's all about, you heard, in situ resource utilization. She developed a project using chemistry. You know, how do you create methane from the elements on the planet? And how do you create other things? And so they took that challenge and wove it into part of their chemistry class.
Cool. That's really good. I've got to talk to her. We got to trade secrets. One thing that we were able to do is practice teamology. Charlie emailed me a spreadsheet where we give the students a cognitive mode survey, and that tells where they sit on the spectrum, and we use that to divide up the teams. It's a little bit complicated, so I was glad I got a chance to practice it. Well, then we did another video conference with Charlie, and I invited that board member who was interested, and other board members and principals, and anybody I could get that was in a position that could help us make decisions. All right, now, in addition to that, I also ran an after-school NASA club program. And we started with 8 students. By June, we had 3. I only have a picture of 2 because I don't. Everybody whose faces you see, I have parental signed permission to do this. I didn't have hers, so I'm very careful about that. They signed 2 permission slips. They signed one for me to be able to do research, which I'll talk about more later, and they signed one for us to share their stuff on YouTube and to NASA. All right, now, in the end of 2014, a supervisor came up to me and they said, we're thinking of this new engineering course. I said, really? And they said, are you interested? I said, well, can I write the curriculum? Can I make it a NASA-based course, you know, among other things that the district wants? They said, yes. So we were there, we arrived.
Unfortunately, the NASA educators, or work for the office, left. But this is, but they'll get to hear this eventually. But heck, imagine if we had hundreds of high schools like you guys that were doing this, taking the content, the great content we already have, and the great people to help you, which we do, and people do like Dan Mazanick and other folks, that thousands of us that give up their time that would be willing to do that.
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
That'd be great.
Thanks for that.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. In my class this year, I have 3 teams. This is team 1. They have a lot of fun in class. This gentleman here is Ryan. I'll tell you a little bit more about him later. This is team 2, very creative team. Team 3.
It's the same guy in each team. Is that the same guy on the left there, or am I being...
Oh, go through it now. Then team 1.
Oh, okay. I thought that guy in the
It's a
bottom.
photo
All
bomb.
right. And then team 2.
I'm being...
And team 3.
Better stay off the loop.
Now I'll get into the real course that I'm teaching now. First I'll talk to you about the academic approach. The approach, as you've already heard, and I won't go over I'll just give you the short version, is you've got this project, this NASA project that students are inspired by. And so you use that, you immerse them in the problem, they already own the problem, they want to solve the problem. And then it becomes guided inquiry, where they're going to direct the solution to this problem. Now, I do what they call lead from the back. So when the student has this idea that they want to solve a project, and all of a sudden they start getting questions, and they need to know something. So if they're now, if they're going to use a rocket to get to Mars or to get to the asteroid, they're coming to me and they're asking me, what's the chemistry of rocket fuel? This is like I died and went to teacher heaven. They're asking me to teach them lessons, right? But I don't want to teach them, just lecture them and bore them for another 45 minutes, because then we're back where we started from. All right? Now, it becomes individual instruction, because I got 20 students in the class. Each one is asking a different question. I don't know what I'm going to do every day. I know what general direction I'm going to go into, but I can be teaching one of any of 100 different lessons. And it's not just me lecturing and feeding them, what I want them to know. It's getting them to figure out the answers and get to the solutions themselves. So it's by far the hardest teaching assignment I've ever had. This matching game between content and what the student wants to know today takes a lot of work. Right? And the video conferences absolutely make it real. Right? When they know they're going to talk to a professional at NASA, then it becomes real in their minds. And then the creative process is the last part of this phase, and I'm going to talk more about that later. Now, here's a pattern that works. There's a lot of ways to do this, but here's a pattern that works in my classroom. We start with an individual design. We give the students the challenge, and then we say, okay, go off by yourself, don't talk to any peers, and tell me how you would do this. All right? And because what I find is that when you put students together in a group right away, that the student with the most social equity gets their way, and the design becomes theirs. All right? And in the process, once they're getting into their design, I inspire them to ask questions, and then I teach them how to answer their own questions. Right? Now, a couple ways to do that. Research the literature. With iPhones today, it's awesome, because you can say, go Google that. Right? But you got to monitor that closely, because some of those websites are legit and some are not. Some of the stuff they come back with, you got to edit it. All right? Then by experiment. So we actually have, I'll show you later, we have an experiment that we did in the classroom to generate information for the Mars Habitat Project, because we also did that challenge this year too. Now, there's the old-fashioned is the lectures, instruction, which I avoid because I'm trying to get away from that. All right, I don't know what to say right here. I'm assuming that there's other ways for me to teach I haven't figured out yet. Right? So it's a question
through failure.
Yeah, I'm getting good at that. All right, so then after we individual phase, we go into a group phase. Now they work in the teams and they bring their ideas together as a team, and then they design and they redesign and they build prototypes. I lied. We don't build prototypes. We don't have the money to build prototypes. We don't have the tools or the resources in our department. So I would like to someday form a nonprofit to raise money to help teachers do these things that are outside the normal budget.
That's what we definitely need to do, without a doubt.
I'm on board. I'm with you, Charlie.
I write a lot of grants. I mean, this year
Really?
alone, I got 3 different grants. And really, if you get someone that's a good grant writer to sit down and talk to you about it, everyone thinks that getting grants is a difficult thing, but if you're a good grant writer and you learn how to develop a grant, there's so much money out there.
And you want to know something, Tracy, you're absolutely right. And Amy can tell you that at the university level, they need to go out and show that they're partnering and doing K-12. And they go after certain grants. But what they tell me, Amy, from the K-12 side is, they feel like they're being used. The universities are only doing it to get them to do the grants, and then boom, it's over with. And the connection isn't there anymore. It's a great thing. Yeah, we're working with schools. Here they are. Yeah, get out of here, kids. No. And so what we want to do, and so that whole framework that I had was really how do we link all that together and cobble together the individual grants that the universities can get by linking the universities, like with local high schools and middle schools in your area. That's where we make the connection, and it's a win-win situation for both sides, because the universities can get some big grants and they can help give you the money, and you can go after also your individual grants to do that. But yeah, I would love to see a nonprofit, because I really believe the way to do this, and Jim, you started a nonprofit, the way to do this for NASA as a business case is start at the top. We want to be able to pay the top end of the food chain, the graduate students, the faculty, but really the grad students, because you want to be able to do research at that level, and because you know how tough it is to get grants, to sustain that area of research in those graduate students. But I think when you have this all the way down at the low end, to the point where you have thousands and thousands now as you count up all the middle schools elementary schools and high schools, these kids are participating. Why wouldn't their parents want to pay? They're already buying games for these kids.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they pay a small fee? And then that, when you roll that money up the top, that pays for the little bits along the way. So it's almost, you can make it almost self-sustainable. Grants are great, but when grants dry up, boom, the program goes away. So how do you make it sustainable? We have some great nonprofits out there, but that's something that we should talk about. Because what I want to do in this area, Tracy, is get the high schools, the middle schools connected with some of the universities to do that. And to start this here. We're doing it in Massachusetts. We did it with MIT. We'd like to be able to keep sustaining those programs, because you could pick the epic challenge du jour. I'm doing space and aeronautics, but every field has its own epic challenges that resonates with kids, that they could find their passion for. And every industry wants to create that pipeline of brilliant kids that are inspired to work in that enterprise, that field, that sector. And so I'm watching businesses do this, like we're doing it in aerospace, we're doing it with Boeing and other partners, watching people starting up what we started in aerospace. They're doing it in cybersecurity, they're doing it in other areas. They could be doing it in robotics anyway, but yeah.
And one thing to remember when you're talking about fees, like for clubs and stuff, I got this one out, you have to be conscious of the low income that can't pay for it.
That's right.
But they're the
make
ones
a
that
scholarship.
Yeah.
You subsidize that. And that's exactly what we did. For instance, when we did this in the summer school for 6 weeks, we had some students pay, and we had like 60 students at one point that basically took this for 6 weeks in the summer when I was at NYU. And those kids, 50% of those kids didn't pay for that program. And that's how you subsidize and make sure you get kids throughout the spectrum. You know.
That's right. I'm there, Charlie.
Yep.
All right. I'll form that nonprofit with you.
All right.
Okay. All right. Now, in each class for the assignments, I make up rubrics, but then I give the rubrics to the class, and they get to retool the rubrics. We did this in the Mars Challenge, and when I put the rubric out there, we spent 3 weeks tearing the rubric apart, deciding what each thing was worth, and say, well, what's the value in that? Well, they weren't just taking the rubric apart, they were taking the parameters of the Mars project apart. If you think oxygen is more important in your design and you want to do it chemically, well, then you're going to make it worth more points. But the student wants to do it biologically with plants, he's going to want to make that more points. Or maybe they should be equal. And how about video games? Well, should the oxygen be more important than the video games? Well, most people would agree, but they wouldn't throw out the video games. They say, look, we're going to be up there in this pod somewhere in Mars.
Psychology.
We got the same.
Psychological aspects of living in space. That's where you get the humanities involved in the design of the space and what it looks like, so that these people are happy if they're going to be there for an extreme environment. It gets everyone into the picture.
So not only did they affect their grade by changing their rubric, but we also made a better project because of that. And then it boils down to actually producing a written report with an oral presentation. And we put that together in a video conference to Charlie. And we put it on YouTube like the week before, and then they do it live. Now, at the end of it, I do reflections. I have this, it's not enough that the student just can do this stuff. They have to take a look at their skills and what they've learned and metacognate. They have to think about their own thinking. And their job is to prove to me that they've actually learned this material. And that does a couple things. Right? Well, I'll talk more about that later when I talk about standards, because that messes with the standards. Right? The pedagogical approach, from that standpoint, I'm heavy into research. I got my master's at the University of Pennsylvania. Part of my thesis, I had to pre-test the students, gather data, produce a lesson, post-test the students. So I actually had data to prove my lesson either worked or failed. Right? And this is the way I believe education should go. The power of testing should be in the hands of the individual teachers, where they can make a difference in their lessons in real time. Instead of putting the money at the state level, where they do all that testing, where they have the least amount of leverage over the classroom, put it in the hands of the teachers. Right? Right? Give us the tools, give us the resources to be able to do this to all of our lessons and use the data ourselves. All right? We have in New Jersey something called student growth objectives, and it's really the same thing I just said. We have to pre-test, post-test the students and prove that there's learning that's going on. All right? Now, we give our students, I give the students a learning survey beginning of the year so I know what kind of learners they are, and that's valuable information to how I tailor the instruction.
Do you use the Felder's learning standards? Rich Felder, do you use that?
Yeah, I think it's the Felder's one. Yeah. And so I have it, there's an online version, but I do the paper version on it that I printed out from online, so I like to have the hard copy for that. But if I can figure out how to do it on Google Classroom, because we have Google Classroom this year, I might do it that way and then get a compiled survey. Okay. And then we do the cognitive mode survey, which I learned from Charlie, to divide the students up by their cognitive modes and to make better teams. But I don't select the teams independently. I have the students actually select the teams. We put it on the projector, on a spreadsheet, and we move around people until we get balanced teams.
So you let each kid look at the cognitive mode style of each of the other kids and kind of pick people on their team.
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's leadership skills.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, once I get it started, I can just sit back and watch them pull it all together and just tweak it when they get off task. Right? Now, New Jersey has adopted, or will adopt next year, the Next Generation Science Standards. This is a new Bible for what science educators in the states that have adopted them believe the students should be able to know, and more importantly, to be able to do by the time they graduate high school. I've created an instrument that I call a Student Standards Inventory. And the core science standards is divided into practices, cross-cutting concept, and core ideas. I've taken each one of those standards, and this is hard to read, so I'm going to blow it up for you. Each one of these numbered items is a standard or practice. I cut and paste word for word from the standards package into this spreadsheet. Then underneath that, there is a red area. The student, at the beginning of the year, they go through all the 50-plus standards, and they tell me what class they learned to do this in high school. And they type that in red. It shows up automatically in red. And then in blue, they tell me how. Well, in biology class, I learned how to do this. And it's okay at the beginning of the year if they put none. They just don't remember or whatever for the beginning of the year. So they're not graded on what happens in September. But then come midterm exam, they go back to the same spreadsheet, which I've saved online for them, and they tell how they earn this, practice this skill in this particular course, in what lesson or what project or what challenge. So in red, they identify the course, and then in blue, they identify how exactly they did this. And then these boxes over here for me to grade it. So I'll grade it for their midterm. It's part of their midterm. We don't have a midterm exam, we have a midterm project. And it's a big part of the midterm project. And then they do it again in the final exam. Now, what this does, it helps them think about what they're learning and identify what they're learning, justify what they're learning. And if they see this before they get into the projects, so they're looking for ways to prove to me that they've learned stuff, because the more they can find, the better their grade's going to be. And what it does for me is it tells me if I'm failing or succeeding. It tells me where I'm getting someplace. There's a baloney factor here that you can sort out, because you can tell the student that it's giving you what they think you want to hear. But from most of the students, you get some really good insights. Some positive, some negative, and they're both very useful. All right, now here's an example. Practice 1A says ask questions about the natural and human-built worlds. And then this is one student's actual midterm response. How do biomes contribute to a balanced ecosystem? What an awesome question that is. When my students designed a Mars habitat, they just didn't design someplace for them to live. They designed a colony where the human race could continue from. So they decided early on that they were going to bring actual biomes there. And so we started doing calculations on biomes, and then that led to calculations on rockets. If you're going to build so many trees, can you get that in a rocket, or do you have to bring seeds? And then if you bring seeds, what do you do in the meantime for your oxygen and your food? So this is an extremely in-depth question. Here's another one. Standard 1B said distinguish a scientific question from a non-scientific question. this student said, well, which surface of the Mars habitat, what color should it be for energy purposes, for retaining the energy? And a completely different question than what makes it look more beautiful. And the last example I have is to formulate and refine questions that can be answered empirically in a scientific classroom. Well, this student said, how can I calculate the perfect speed and trajectory to get a rocket into space? Now, the student came up with this question. Then I had homework to do. So I went home and I designed this lab where we launched a model rocket and we collected data from it. We've got some probes we can calculate velocity and acceleration and forces. And then we could mask the engine before and after. And then we could take this data, and we make some wild assumptions here, but it's not about the assumptions. We take this data and say, how can you extrapolate this to a real mission? If you're sending a rocket to Mars, how much solid fuel, if you're going to use that, would you need? What kind of velocity would you need? How would you get it? And so this actually branched out to the students for their midterm projects doing different design rockets with different lengths and measuring the efficiency of the different rockets. I mean, this comes from a student question. So they have the question, and I have the homework.
So they write this before you would teach any of this? So you design your lessons based on their questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, not always, but that's the way, when it's working right, that's the way it works.
Right.
So they come up with these ideas, and I know that you're working on oxygen generation. So then I would come home and design a lesson on building a biosphere. And then I come back the next day or whenever, and I give you that biosphere and say, okay, Tracy, you make this biosphere, gather this data, I'll show you how to gather the data, then you do the calculations, you tell me how much oxygen you need, how many plants you need.
But
To answer your question.
See, Tracy, this is where, if we had a really cool virtual platform where people like you and hundreds of other teachers like you that are getting similar questions, or creating lessons around that everyone could share those lessons. It's a little less work, a little less trouble for you, because obviously this is a tremendous amount of work, especially if you don't know something and you have to learn it before you teach it. But wouldn't it be great if you can now search on that platform the concept that you want to teach and how to teach it, and there'll be multiple different ways of how to do that you can not only learn from and take and try for the first time, but you will eventually make it better, just like Wikipedia constantly gets better. People curate it themselves.
That would be fantastic. If I had a resource to go to that I could pull lessons like that,
and
that would be great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you should be able to look at all the content that NASA has, for instance. If we would just get in the business of curating it so that it's searchable, so that you could use it, and then once you use it and repurpose it for whatever level you're trying to teach at that level, then that gets reproduced as a lesson plan that other people could curate based on the lessons and the objectives and the concepts that you're trying to teach.
Yeah, in a process we'd merge it with the standards.
And it could all be related to a particular problem, so it's applied learning to whatever the kids are interested in. Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be terrific.
Professional learning communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For teachers and then have them for students as well.
That'd be cool.
I mean, this is the age of the internet, right? This is what people are doing. This is why, like some of these really cool people that I'm working with, like Jana Hattel and Peter Morales at NYU, Jana in Finland, and some of these other folks. This is where you get these kinds of ideas from, because this is the way the kids think now. You know.
Cool.
Not us dinosaurs, not us digital dinosaurs like me.
These are some of the units and challenges that we did this year. We did the Mars habitat design. We built an actual biosphere, and I'll talk more about that later. That's related to Mars. Then we did midterm projects where they could build anything they wanted subject to approval. And their grade was based upon the science that they could demonstrate and that it worked. If it worked, they got a better grade than if it didn't work. Then we did the asteroid capture project, and we're wrapping that up now. The students are putting their presentations.
I'm going to challenge you to turn that around.
Yeah?
You get a better grade if it worked than if it didn't work. You should teach them that, and I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, so who am I to talk? But what I would say is base it not on whether it worked or didn't work, but how much they learned.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because remember Ali DeVec at MIT, I don't know if he made it to Penn State that year, but Ollie basically taught a course in rapid prototyping. And it was amazing that it was a very, very quick course, and he made him go through these rapid innovate, ideate, analyze, design, build, test, fail, several cycles in this 1 6-week course, which was in between sessions at MIT. They would offer these courses. He developed a rapid prototyping course, and what he found was that some of these students built stuff that wouldn't work, or they did something just a little bit wrong. And in the process of doing that, they learned so much more, and they ended up, these kids ended up sometimes getting better grades. So
I'm going to use that. So next time I get the student, next time I get the student that has a project that
what do I
fails.
know? What do I know?
No, you're right. Have them show what they learned by the project and save the grade.
So that they're learning from the failure. They don't just keep making the same mistake.
We're down to standardized testing right now, but one of the ways I practice it with students is we don't ever focus on the right answer because they're all smart enough you can figure out the right answer. But my interest is you need to prove to me why the other 3 are wrong.
I like that.
That's pretty
That's that failure piece of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Okay. We did another project called Conqueror of the Hill. Now, here's the biosphere experiment.
Wow.
Okay. We have, these are plastic biospheres. They seal airtight. We put in actual live plants and live animals. This is in fish and water. There's a cricket in this other one. Now, these here are probes. We measure the oxygen content produced by the plants. We also measure the carbon dioxide that's produced by the animals, and we can measure the ratio of these. So we set these up, we let it run for a couple of weeks. Then we take the data from this, and this is your experiment, Tracy. You take the data from this, and we extrapolate it out to a Mars habitat. So if this is 1 cubic meter, let's say, and you need 100,000 cubic meters to support 100 people in Mars, then you can calculate, with some wild assumptions, but that's cool, how many plants you need and the leaf surface area. You get into the chemistry of it, you get into the chemical formulas of it, you get into the amount of sunlight that's on Mars and the research you do, there's less sunlight. It just goes on. And it's all student driven because they keep asking the questions. All right.
It's all inquiry based.
Yeah. All right, now let's talk about the asteroid capture project itself. Right. In the asteroid capture project, it starts with a problem immersion. Now, here's a video I'll explain to you and show you later. We spent a lot of time on this where they do research on asteroids, and people, they start off thinking asteroids are just rocks. Why would we care about a rock? Well, pretty soon when they do their homework and I show them some videos, we begin to realize there's lots of precious minerals in those rocks, and there's good reason to have them.
And you want to know what's great about this? I've done this for the last 5-6 years. We have tons of videos that now we could curate so that people could access them, like you guys. So when Dan Mazanek speaks about capture mechanisms and asteroid, you get it from the horse's mouth. You get the lecture, and if not for the students, you can take that and repurpose that lecture and ask questions of your students from it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Because some of the videos are way above the kids. Some of them are above my head.
Yeah.
So trying to explain it to the kids.
But that's your hard job. You got it. That's right.
But that video that I'll show you later, just it sums up in like 2 minutes what we do. And the videos I picked are very high in contact. Although I didn't pick the sections of them that were high in contact, I picked the sections that were high in emotions. So you get to see why the asteroids are so valuable and what happens if we don't capture one that gets loose and lands on the Earth and does mass destruction.
Let me ask a question first. Mark, are you on the line, Mark Tronicky at Bergen Academy?
Yeah, we're on, Charlie. Can you see us, our video too?
I don't have your video up because we're projecting the slides here. But what we could do is, do you have a hard and fast you want to start at 3:20?
No, we're good. We're still actually waiting for the students. I have Mike Nebo, the physics teacher here, ready to go. But yeah, you tell us when we need to chime in.
Okay, how many more minutes do you have? And Richard, we could show the videos at the end.
Yeah, we can do the videos at the end.
About how many
I'm
more
not
minutes?
sure, 10, 20...
10 minutes, and hang on, Mark, and Richard is going to finish up, and then we'll let you share your screen, and hopefully we'll be able to see what you present, okay?
Great, and then audio is fine, right? We'll just stick with this. I shut it down on the computer. We should be ready to go.
Yep, that sounds great. Thanks, Mark.
All right, you got it.
Okay. All right, so this follows the pattern before. I give the students an independent assignment where they write down their ideas of video capture, and then, back up, this is the rubric that I use to grade it, and they also have input into this rubric like I explained before. This is a sample. This student, she came up with 11 different steps that you would use for the asteroid. So I know they're thinking about steps, not minute detail, but big steps.
Yeah.
And we did this on Google Classroom, and what I did is designed a survey. So each student gets an email with this survey. They cut and paste their steps into the survey. Then I get an email, that's a spreadsheet, with all of the results. Now, by the way, when students start sharing their ideas with each other, I've got a lot of students that are asking, what are other classrooms doing? I mean, there's other classrooms across the world. What are the college students doing? And they want to know. So if I could Skype with them, or Jim, if I could Skype with your kids mid-year or something, they would love that.
They would love that,
That would be cool. And we get this spreadsheet, and we put it up on the board, and I let the students have at it, and they tear it apart. They're not allowed to remove any ideas, but they actually create a new spreadsheet, and they can only remove ideas that are exact duplicates. They have to keep all the ideas, because we don't want to lose any ideas because they're stupid, because they might end up being really good. Right? And they create this compiled spreadsheet. Then I take the compiled spreadsheet, and I design a Word document, and I put this Word document back on Classroom, and now we go back into individual designs. So now that we've mapped out where we're going to go with this, each student gets, now we get into the particular detail, where they all map out what they're actually going to do. Right? Here's a rubric that I use to grade their work. Two things I want you to see about this rubric. One is they get points for grammar and spelling. Now, I'm okay with grading grammar and spelling, but I'm really looking for an English teacher to recruit, that I can have them grade the English part, and the student gets 2 grades. Science grade for me and English grade from them. The other thing that they get points on for what I call the OSTB quotient, that's outside the box quotient. So they get points for being creative, and they get extra points for being what I call the stupidity quotient. Those ideas like the bird coming out of the stomach, if you look stupid at first, right, they actually...
So you're rewarding stupid ideas, which is
yes,
good.
yes,
Which is excellent.
Absolutely. Now, then we go back to the group session, and then they're producing the actual report, the PowerPoint, and the video conference. All right, now, enough of the left side of the brain. This is all very left side of the brain stuff. I spend a lot of time and energy stimulating the right side of the brain. Here I have one of my best students. He's a chemistry student who wandered into my engineering class one day to make up a test, and saw the kids were presenting, and he says, can I do it too? Can I do the asteroid? So he actually went and did a couple weeks worth of research, and he presented his own project. Well, a week ago, he came in and gave this to me. He made a rocket in ceramics class. So here's a student. He's got it going on right and left brain. And that's what I encourage. And we know about the NIA's biodesign. And now, this video, you got to see at the end. One of the students came up to me. Charlie, remember when you said you were worried I was going to kick you out? Or because of with Jack's ideas?
Yeah.
Right? Well, what I did is one student came up to me, jokingly, he says, well, I'd rather do an interpretive dance. He says, you're on. And I have a videotape of their interpretive dance, of their asteroid capture. Right?
Let me recollect, were you in Penn State?
I was in Penn State with Jack, and then...
Were you in Penn State when we actually had the professional actress?
Yes, she was amazing.
Okay.
I got to get that video. It's a video of me doing an interpretive dance. Somebody there has it. I got to get that. My students want to see it.
No, they do.
They probably will.
It's like the last day of class.
Okay, then I had another student who said he wanted to do a song, and this student's like a theatrical genius. He's in all the plays, got a tremendous voice, and he wrote a song. He took Billy Joel's song, We Didn't Start the Fire. He wrote all the 5 stanzas were the lyrics for We're Gonna Catch an Asteroid. And I have a short clip of that too, to show you. All right. Now, when I was doing this PowerPoint, I took a break and I went to Facebook, and this was posted by one of my students from 20 years ago. I thought, this is really appropriate, right? To awaken joy and creative expression and knowledge. So I put that in there. All right. Now, that student Ryan, by the way, called Charlie out on something. I forgot what it was, but he turned around and called you out on something on our video conference. And that's Ryan. He's like, he doesn't hold back. You know, you get what you see with Ryan. His ideas are totally creative. Well, when I knew I had to do this presentation, I went to my students and said, well, tell me, what have you learned? What can I say? Ryan turns around and says, Mr. what did you learn? That's like essential. That's really the question I should be asking. Well, first thing I learned is, I got a long way to go. I'm just starting this. There's so much I don't know. The hardest part for me is to get students to ask good questions. I mean, they're used to going so far, but in the educational system, we stop them at this point. When you let them go further, they don't know where to go. So I need to build up my repertoire, getting students to ask better and deeper questions. Then when they ask the questions, I've got to figure out how to teach them to answer the questions. I got to get better at that. And they have a tremendous amount of questions. As a matter of fact, not only do they have questions, but they realize that there's things they don't know. They sense there's something that they don't know. So I got to be able to teach them to know what they don't know. Right? Now, in order to do that, I need 100 lessons or more in my backpack every day, because I don't know who's going to ask me what. Right? And you know what? I can't do it. I don't know everything. I'm a chemistry teacher. I'm good enough at the chemistry. You know, the other stuff, I need area experts that I can turn to and I can get answers from and say, give me a lesson. I don't know the last thing about thermodynamic, effective, leading wing, space age, when the foam hits. I don't know anything about that. All right? So I need somebody that does. All right?
But you know what, that's where the virtual platform helps. And the intent is to have subject matter experts that you can go to just at the right time to give you just the right direction or point you to the right place. So it's not who you know. It's not the friend of Charlie, but it's the friend of Charlie, if he doesn't know the answer, that points you to the right person.
There are programs with this type of platforms, the IB schools.
Really?
They're a worldwide support system for teachers.
We have to talk.
You have to apply.
Okay.
The school in Norfolk, the STEM school that I was telling you about, just was granted that position too. So.
When we're done, let me know how to get that.
I don't know if you use NASA Neon, the Neon network, if that helps the educators. We'll have to talk about that. Too bad the NASA educators left, but I mean, a lot of them were away on a conference, so they couldn't be here, unfortunately. But we'll have to check that out.
Here's some of the things that I didn't do this year that I would. I spend more time on explaining cognitive modes, getting to understand it, working on these problem-solving skills, brainstorming, quiz, so forth. Just as a critique of things I didn't do that I want to do next year. Here's some other possible challenges. I won't go into this because all these are described in Charlie's papers that he wrote. They're on my website, the required reading for my course. But there are other NASA challenges. All right. Now, I had an ending to this story, and I showed my students the PowerPoint last week, and they didn't like my ending. I said, Mr. Wilczewski, all due respect, it sucks. So, okay, and no offense taken, I think.
They're from Jersey. They're from Jersey.
They're from Jersey, yeah. Right. So I said, okay, so what should I do? And they said, well, you should interview us and get comments from us and then edit it. I said, let's do Wednesday, This is like Monday afternoon. I said, don't worry, we'll do it for you. So they asked for my video camera, and they did a short 3 minutes, only 3 minutes long. As a class, they got together and they put their comments in about their perspective on the whole program. And that's the last video I'll show you, and that's... After that video, I'm done.
Well, you know what? We got to show that video then.
Okay.
I want to see all of them.
We do want to see all of them. But let's show that one for now.
Okay.
We'll have the folks check. Because what happens is they can't see this virtually, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, they can't see it virtually. We haven't figured out how to do it. Let me see. We have.
Why did I think about it?
Mine is on, I think.
Yours is on, so. Let me see. I see Mark Choniki. I'm going to try to see if we can get one of these videos to.
I had something
play.
from one day.
I'm not seeing it.
Look what so-and-so did. So I didn't show her the mistake. Got so split.
Charlie, you can queue up anytime. I'm here with Mr. Leva, the physics teacher. We'll stand by that.
Okay. I just want to try to show this one video.
Okay, you got it. Just like that.
You might not be able to see it, but we're going to show it here at least.
Okay.
I mean, that spoke just back and forth between me and her. You know, teacher, mom, parents. That's the worst situation ever. Especially when it's a math specialist. Your daughter has A's in everything but a B+ in that.
And power lesson.
Can you imagine my horror? But she was so interested in knowing what other kids use, what strategies were they using, how were they attempting, what was their entry point for that problem. And then she thrived off of it.
Hi, my name's Alexis and I really enjoyed this class. One of the reasons why I enjoyed it was because it was really independent and it felt like almost like a college class, which was a little bit hard to get used to at first, but I really ended up enjoying it. Popcorn, Evelyn.
What I really enjoyed about this course was being able to think outside of the box and just have new experiences, because I know for me I'm not really a science person, so this kind of like opened me up to like thinking in a different way.
I'm a senior, and out of my 4 years of high school, this is probably one of my favorite classes because of all the creative freedom we've had and all the things I've been able to learn just by going off on my own and just asking any questions that I want.
Popcorn Ben.
I'm a junior, and this is probably my favorite science class that I've ever taken. It's just a really fun class. It challenges you to think outside the box, and even though it's a lot of work, it pays off and it's just a really fun course in general.
My name is Kiana Luga, and I'm a senior here in Morristown, and I really like this class because, like, I'm not limited to any ideas I have or any questions at all, or whatever, you know, and I really liked the friendships that I was able to make here in my class. Like, we're
What
just
friendships?
then we're just like all cool or whatever in class, and we could just, like, you know, talk about, we're free to make any type of discussion that we have, like, basically, like, mostly, like, you know, work and maths and stuff, and I really like that.
Cornet.
Hi, I'm a senior. I really enjoyed this first year of this class. It really opened my eyes to what engineering is really like. I love that I got to use my own creativity to design whatever I really wanted to, if that was making my own Mars habitat or making an idea to capture an asteroid. I just thought it was a really cool experience to see what astronauts really do and how they come up with these ideas.
Glenn. Popcorn Glenn.
Little shy guy. What's up? My name is Glenn. I'm a senior. What I really like about this class is that your creativity flow could come out a little bit more than almost any other class, because you're not really sitting and being taught for 45 minutes or something like that. You're actually sitting and thinking of your own ideas rather than being told what to do or what to think.
And Maddie, come on.
Come on, Maddie.
Come on, everybody else.
But I'll add one. I'll add another one.
This is Maddie.
Hi. So, I also really loved the opportunity we had to talk to people actually from NASA. It really made the course real, as Mr. Wilczewski already said.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Wow. Well, you know what that says? It says what a great teacher. What a great job. You did a good job. It'd be a tremendous amount of hope. And now I see kids from New Jersey piling in here, right? And we're gonna get the folks from Bergen Academy to give a little presentation.